Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think the post-lunch sessions are the best for any panel. If you stay awake, we are very good. Clap for us. And if you doze off, we can blame it on the pulao. Okay, so this is a good topic. First of all, I'm privileged to be here with panelists all of whom I know personally. They're all friends and colleagues and well-wishers and founders of Bharat. What we like to call Bharat at Jharkhand Angels is cities beyond the 4-5 major metros of the country. So if you walk just a few kilometers outside Bangalore, you will find Bharat. If you walk a few 100 kilometers outside Bangalore, you will find more of Bharat. And we have always believed that if Hindustan has to progress, then Bharat and India need to run together step by step. If you leave Bharat behind, the progress is going to be limited. It is going to be limited to a few pockets of our country, while the rest of the country will stay behind. And that's why this topic is very close to my heart. Thank you for inviting us. What I'd like to do is I'll hand over the mics to the co-panelists who can introduce themselves one by one, and then we'll take the session questions. Most of the audience questions we'll take at the end of the session, but if you are desperate for an answer to one of your questions, raise your hand and I'll come to you. Even during the middle of the session, that's not a problem at all. Varun, over to you.
Yes, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Varun Mahendru. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Playbook. Now, what we are doing at the Playbook is that we are going beyond learning in the so-called crowded edtech market. We are going beyond learning in terms of creating a creators community where kids can go hang out, engage in creative pursuits, compete with each other, and in the process, build habits and get rewarded for that. So that's what we are doing. It's been 1.5 years for us in the journey, and we're there in 8 countries. Started from Jamshedpur, the steel city, and obviously want to go and want to have like all the billion kids across the globe to have our application. So that's what Playbook is.
So that's wonderful. So if you look at it, the K-12 education space is crowded. Varun is trying to declutter that by going beyond classroom education and getting kids to engage with life as a whole. So gamification of learning, getting people to engage with their other pursuits beyond education. So great job, Varun. Would you want to call out some of your competitions globally? Who with the typical competitions?
See, the competition when it comes to kids, it's with the students' time. The competition is for the child's time rather than just the tuitions or the school or the other things that they are engaged in. Now, what we want to do is that you cannot avoid screen time. And secondly, there's a massive skill deficit, which ultimately leads to unemployment, soft skills being the major contributor of the deficit. So what we are doing is that making that screen time valuable, and also by rewarding and gratification that gives that encouragement to do this in the foundational years. So just to sum it up, it's basically a Canva and an Instagram in a kid friendly and a very safe avatar that we are building and making it very affordable, starting at like just 10 rupees a day, so that not just the top 1 million or 2 million parents who can afford high cost courses, but even a person in the remotest part of the country should be having a smartphone, which is already highly penetrated in the country and more so in the coming years, can have access to quality education and learning, and a shared learning space can be created.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. So I am Satyajeet and I'm the co-founder of Fydo. So basically we are a deal discovery platform which help shoppers to get best deals and information on different sales from all shops and malls in the city. So as you might have seen with big brands, they have a separate marketing budget, right? They can promote their offers on different websites or maybe banners. But the small shops out there, they don't have separate marketing budget. They don't have any budget how to advertise on different platforms. So basically, we are helping these shopkeepers with competing with the big players out there. So that's what we do. At the same time, we are helping with the customers to get information on all the offers from their nearby shops. Yeah.
So what I understand is that you are also different from other deal discovery platforms in the sense that you are hyper local, correct? So which are the cities or towns you are currently targeting?
Yeah, so right now we started from one city, that is Bhubaneswar. And right now we are live in 4 cities in 2 different states. So Jamshedpur, Ranchi, Bhubaneswar, and Cuttack.
Good afternoon, guys. I'm almost similar to you. I haven't slept for last 2 days. I've been traveling, just coming from Goa. I was not partying. I was speaking at an event. My name is Ravi Ranjan. I call myself an entrepreneurship evangelist. It's a very strong word. An evangelist is a person who dedicates their entire life for a particular cause. I dedicated my life to entrepreneurship. The reason I come from a very small place in Jharkhand, it's called Japla. You know, when I was growing up, there was a highest Naxal affected area in the country. So my entire childhood, I have literally grown up with, Naxalites, and I have seen a lot of violence and terror, which inspired me to do something which nobody else was thinking in that part of the country. I figured out I want to do something to change the perspective. I thought I'll become a journalist and I'll be able to change it. I did. I studied journalism, became a journalist, and then realized that unfortunately, media is a place which would not let you speak truth most of the time. Very controversial, but that's the reality. So I left media. And then it has been 12 years now that I've been very fortunate to be part of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in the country and have been able to contribute a lot. Done some things, a lot to be achieved in terms of what I have contributed to the country. I started working with Indian Angel Network, set up their incubator, worked with their angel network, and then helped another fund from Austria launch in India and Nepal, moved to Hong Kong, worked with another network. And then from 2014 to 17, I was leading a very interesting program called 10,000 Startups by NASSCOM. That was the program where I got an opportunity to travel across the country. I traveled right from east to west to north, everywhere, met a lot of people who are today now very popular founders. 2018, I left. I started working and offering consulting to a lot of investment networks, governments across the country and outside. And as of now, very interestingly, during this time at NASSCOM, I used to travel across the country. Whenever I had time, I used to train aspiring people on entrepreneurship. So far, I have trained around not more than, but I think 2 lakh aspiring entrepreneurs, 10,000 faculties, 2,000 government officials in the field of entrepreneurship. I'm the head of chief and events for Venture Catalyst, which is also one of the partner at the event. Last year, I got an opportunity to design a very interesting show. One of the reasons why I did this, because I hate Indian TV and Bollywood. Some of the worst content is made in India. I thought if I have an opportunity, I'll try and make a change. I did a show called Shark Tank India last year for Sony, designed the entire show, and so far the response has been very good. Apart from Venture Catalyst, I also help some of the state governments in designing their policy. I'm also currently the advisor to the royal family of Dubai, where I help them identify good companies from India. I do some more things I don't remember now, but I'll get back to that later.
Thank you, Ravi. So sitting next to a person whose introduction took 5 minutes makes me feel jittery. So I'm Dr. Niraj, based at Patna. I own a startup called Hanuman. It is a 360-degree emergency medical service provider, and we help patients transportation in real time. So in a world where everyone is fighting for 8-minute delivery of pizza and other stuffs, we are delivering ambulances in 15 minutes across Bihar, Jharkhand, Delhi NCR, and parts of Uttar Pradesh. Started in 2020. Before COVID, 2 months before COVID. And COVID was a fortune in disguise for us. And we did enough that we could do humanly possible. Transported more than 5,000 patients in 4 months on ambulances, screened more than 22,000 patients at their doorsteps for COVID and non-communicable diseases. And we also provided ambulances to more than 1,000 of patients at their doorstep. So this is all about what we do. Remaining, I'll introduce more about the company and the vision of the company in next talks. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So my name is Prabhash Nirbhay. I'm the founder of Flipcarbon, which started with a mission about 7.5 years back to give startups an occasion and an opportunity to have access to the same level of CHROs and CFOs as any other enterprise in the world. And we have been quite successful in doing that over the last 7.5 years. Then last year I started Jharkhand Angels. The thesis was simple. I wanted to engage in conversation with startups which were solving real problems. You just heard Niraj talk about a 15 minutes ambulance delivery. It's a very rare occurrence that somebody will die if the pizza doesn't arrive in 10 minutes. But that's quite likely to happen if the ambulance doesn't do that in as much time. So to that extent, I think I've been lucky to be engaging with founders like Niraj, founders like Varun or Satyajeet, and there are others. There's Dr. Indra Jha, who's doing telemedicine for Bharat, although he's based out of Pune. So I have always felt that we need to be building an ecosystem where we solve real problems and bells and whistles can wait a while. So that's what this panel is also trying to achieve. My first question goes to Dr. Niraj. Emergency medical services. I'm pretty sure neither Bihar nor Jharkhand has ever heard those words. How did you start and where has it taken you so far?
So rightly said, Prabhash. So when I came back to Patna, I start with my birth story. So I was born at Bokaro. My roots are at Darbhanga, both small places. Fortunate enough to be a doctor and then especially in emergency medical services, which is a pre-hospital care thing. So when I came back to Patna from Ahmedabad in 2009, no one was recognizing emergency as a specialty. So they know cardiologist, they know orthopedic, gynecologist, but emergencies are handled by the most junior doctors. And emergency itself is a contradiction to the specialty definition. In specialty, you know more and more about less and less. So you study the entire
Just
medicine.
one word. If people can stay a little quieter at the back. Thank you so much.
So specialty is about knowing more and more about less and less. So you read entire medicine and then you read only cardiology. Emergency contradicts the definition, and here you need to understand how to handle with shock, how to handle with a bullet injury. I cannot say that I cannot deliver a baby. I need to know everything if I'm an emergency doctor. So Bihar was not recognizing emergency medical services as a specialty, and then I had to turn off to the management side of healthcare. And I did my MBA and MPhil in hospital health systems management and started my management journey in healthcare. So in all these years, 10 years of my healthcare management practice, one sentence was always painful for me, and that was doctors saying in emergency department, "Thoda pehle le aate to hum bacha lete." Now this thoda pehle was possible or not was always a challenge for me. And I was always looking for a solution. And I was fortunate enough to meet my co-founder in 2019, who is a techie, and I discussed the problem in length. And he said, I have a solution. And then we jumped on to developing technology for aggregating ambulances, aggregating hospitals, identifying right need of the patient. And we have tested it. It was successful. And therefore, we came up with this startup called Hanuman. Doing it at Bihar, Patna was very, very difficult because we were finding it difficult to get tech partners. We were finding it very difficult to get management interns and right mindset of people who are willing to take risk on a startup, both as a working partner and also as an investment partner. But again, as I always say to my younger ones, to the people in my company, कि जब आप किसी चीज को पूरी शिद्दत से चाहते हैं तो पूरी कायनात आपको उससे मिलाने की कोशिश करती है. So people like Prabhash from Jharkhand Angel Network, Anubha Prasad from Karekeba, they all came forward. All are LinkedIn connects. I had never met these people. For the first time, I am meeting Prabhash. After 2 years, he has invested into us. So this is the kind of relationship we have, and people come. If you have a zeal, if you have a solution, if you want to do something, people will come forward to support you. And from there we started, and today we are in 4 states, managing more than 1,500 ambulances on our platform. And it is a phenomenal, wonderful journey so far.
Varun and Satyajeet, let's call out the monkey in the room. One of the reasons I think both of you have shifted from, let's say, Chaibasha to a Bhubaneswar or a Jamshedpur to a Calcutta is because tech talent in Bihar or Jharkhand doesn't stay in Bihar and Jharkhand. Right? We go and build Alexa in the US. What has been your experience of trying to build a tech team based out of these smaller towns?
So So in case of mine, to be very honest, most of the tech team are not from Bihar and Jharkhand. So I have to take them from other states because this is a real problem. Most of the techies, especially, they move out to bigger cities, okay, in search of job and all. So I have to basically, so right now my tech team is from Gujarat. So people are from there and Bangalore. So that is the actual problem that we are facing.
So when it comes to the tech team and availability of them being in Jamshedpur or in the other parts of Jharkhand or Bihar, we need to find what we thought and what we found out was that play on the strengths of the geography. Why we shifted to Calcutta? Because we are a creator community, content community, and content breeds in a Bengalis blood. So that was the reason why we shifted to Calcutta, and we've got amazing writers and journalists working with us. When it comes to tech, yes, we have our entire team sitting out of Pune, and we've brought everything in-house. For the simple reason is that agility is what you require in the first 1,000 days of your startup, because you make mistakes, and the mistakes in a tier 2 or tier 3 city is cheaper compared to the mistake that we make in a metro because of the financial resources. So we are doing fairly well and happy that we are playing on the strengths of different geographies, and Zoom, LinkedIn, all of the other tools and solutions are helping us out.
It is extremely difficult to keep talent in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Most of us from childhood, we are taught to aim high. And one of the ways of aiming high is that if you can't go to Los Angeles, at least go to Bangalore. And under those circumstances, to build a team in Bharat is difficult. And that's why I have even more respect for the founders who are trying to create an ecosystem where in future talent would like to stay around, stick around, and build from there. My biggest pain points are when I think of a Rohit Prasad and then see him building Alexa in US, and he comes from BIT Mesa, he comes from Ranchi. And that's some of the things that we are trying to change in the long term. My vision, for example, is 25 years, that if a Chhattisgarh and a Jharkhand put together sit on more than 50% of the mineral wealth of the country, then why is it that their per capita income is 1/3 of Mumbai? And that's something that we are trying to bring a change around. Given that, Ravi, my next question is to you. You perhaps have the most experience, not just in this panel, but even possibly in this room, in terms of understanding the fundraise ecosystem, the tech ecosystem, the startup ecosystem of the country. Do you believe that there's a gradual shift happening towards tier 2, tier 3, or we are still some distance away?
First of all, congratulations to the panel, especially to Dr. Niraj. What he's trying to build is truly something which the country needs. In the last 10 years, the shift has. So if you look at the early 2000s, the focus was primarily on BPO and BPM, which we did really well. Then we moved into IT export, which again, we did really well. We then moved into application, SaaS-based solution. Just to give you a perspective, I have had the opportunity to work with NASSCOM, which is a very large trade body. When NASSCOM proposed the idea of developing India as an IT country, most of the people in the government were not ready for that. At that time, there used to be Panch Varshya Yojana, 5-year plan. And then in that plan, the focus was on real estate, the focus was on agriculture. But then, people were able to convince the government that we can do something well. At that point of time, India was doing around $105 million in terms of total IT export. Last year, India did a total IT export of around $158 billion. We are the #1 country in the world in terms of IT exports in the world. BPO, BPM, there's nobody who can come even close to us. Then we moved on to mobile applications. We moved on to e-commerce revolution, which happened really well. Today, India has, we have Amazon, Flipkart, and so forth. But then at that point of time, a lot of investors and entrepreneurs started asking question, should we not look at healthcare, access to education, access to cleanliness? Should we not go back to the real problems which need to be solved? And I think to answer your question, Prabhash, that is happening. And today, entrepreneurs are building solutions which are designed for India, for the real problems which we face. Just to give you some perspective, in West Bengal, there's a place called Sundarbans, very popular. Every year, however, thousands of people get attacked by crocodile and tiger, and the nearest hospital is 350 kilometers away. It's almost impossible to save that person's life if you cannot give them that critical care at that particular point of time. So if you're able to build a very sophisticated telemedicine solution which can do that, I think no investor would deny by investing in you and supporting you. But the problem, what was happening is that when we started in terms of the Indian ecosystem, we were focused primarily on looking at the ideas which were very nice in the West. So mobile apps and CRM and all that solution. But I'm very glad that now the shift is happening. Today, I represent Venture Catalyst. We are a $500 million investment network. We have 4 different funds, and we are very proud to share that out of the 400 companies we have invested, more than 60% of them are from tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4. Just to give you a perspective, yes, one of our star performance company is which has given 197x return to our investors in 3 years. Just to give you perspective, if you put 1 crore in that company, you would have got 197 crore. It's called Bharat Pay. The founder is from a very small place, Bhavnagar in Gujarat, right? He started from there. Another of our portfolio company is called My Fitness. It's a peanut butter brand. Peanut butter, primarily American brands have been dominating across the world. In India, there was Sunfeast doing peanut butter, but when My Fitness started, in less than 3 years, today is the #1 peanut butter brand in the country. And he's from, again, a small place in Gujarat, right? There are a lot of other very interesting examples. I mean, if we talk only about Jharkhand and Bihar, we have together some really amazing founders. Unfortunately, these founders were not able to build from Bihar or from Jharkhand or from a small, any other state. Now, the challenge is, it's not only India. If you look at any advanced ecosystem such as US, Silicon Valley has attracted all the top VC money and the talent. Similarly, in Europe, the entire focus is shifted towards Germany and a little bit around UK. So in India also, we started with Bangalore. Now Mumbai and Delhi are kind of catching up. But the challenge still remains the same. There's a lot of talent coming from tier 3 and beyond, I would say, working really well in Bangalore, getting that capital, building that. But unfortunately, I would say a combination of 3 things. Number 1, ignorance from government side. Number 2, ignorance from academia. And number 3, lack of ecosystem is the reason why tier 2 and 3 are not able to expand. But I would say that most of the success story, you look at all the unicorns in the country, you will see more than 60% of the founders are from small places. You see, some of the biggest companies which are being built from India, the founders are from tier 2 and 3. Now we have to look at a particular scenario where I can build a company sitting in Palamu in Jharkhand, or he can build from Behrampur in Orissa. We don't have to move to Bangalore. Bangalore is already choking. We cannot take anymore. So we have to democratize this opportunity and give it back to the Bharat.
That just goes to prove that you are, in fact, very, very clued in. So recently, your story asked me a question. They said, now that the funding winter is here, what is Bharat going to be doing about it? And I had to just respond to them saying that, look, Bharat has been living under funding winter for the last entire decade. 45% of startups come from Bharat. Only 2% of them get funded. So Bharat has nothing to worry about. We are the kings of bootstrap. Having said that, I think one of the questions that I'm going to ask all the 3 founders here is, getting mentorship, getting fundraise, getting incubation in a Bangalore or a Haryana, any parts of Haryana for that matter, or a Bombay or a Pune, that's not at all difficult. Now, when we come to your towns and cities, Chaibasa or Bhubaneswar, Jamshedpur or Kolkata, or Patna or Darbhanga or Bokaro, what has been your experience? Do you get the kind of mentors that you need, or has it been a struggle?
The greatest challenge for a startup from a small town is to get right kind of mentors. Again, as a startup founder, everybody should look at solutions. So there will be problem finding mentor, there will be problem finding investor. The solution always has to be found. And when I see Bangalore, when I see Delhi, you sit in any cafe, you can find a co-founder. You sit in any of best of the hotels, you will get best of the mentors. Fortunately, LinkedIn and other social media platforms has made a platform wherein you can find anything and everything possible. So I met Prabhash on LinkedIn. I met all my mentors. Today I have a strategic advisor from Philip Morris International. I have someone from Avana Capital. I have someone from HUL. And these are the people who are connected just on the vision of the company. एक चीज बहुत स्पेसिफिक है which I want to say कि एक ad आता था बोल डाला तो life जिंगा लाला. If you have a problem, you must say this. Tell the world that you have a problem and you will find a solution to it. Very difficult if you are just looking for a solution near to you. If you are looking for a mentor in Patna, if you want to get a physical meeting, that is very difficult. But if you are looking for online, there are Bihari diaspora, Odia diaspora sitting all across the world, and you get connects. The world is beautiful. You will certainly get connects. Last point, as Ravi was talking, day before yesterday, I was in an event called Khoj at Patna. It was again organized by Venture Catalyst with a management institute. So people across the world are now moving towards smaller cities to find out startups, and they offer mentorships and investments. You just need to be alert and find out these opportunities. There is a very famous book called Fortune Lies at the Bottom of Pyramid. What Prabhash was saying, कि Bangalore से 20 किलोमीटर बाहर निकल जाओ, you will see a different India. So leave 20 cities which the businesses are looking at. India is a conglomerate of 6 lakh small villages. Consumers are there. So we need to tap these untapped market, and there lies the business. The consumers are there, and therefore if there is a problem, there will be a solution and there will be a startup there. Startups are not simple businesses. It is all about finding a solution and scaling it up. So the last point that I would like to make, difficulties will exist. It's always there in tier 2, tier 3 town, but there will be startups like Fydo, like Playbook, like Hanuman, which will come forward and solve the problem. Thank you.
First, I would like to thank LinkedIn. And as he told, so LinkedIn plays a very important part. So basically, I am from Chaivasa. It's a very small town beside Jamshedpur, 60 kilometers to that. And if you will see Bangalore, as he told, in every corner of the city, you will get some startup guy talking. In our city, there's nothing like that, right? So I was really happy that, and one more thing, that I started using LinkedIn from that time only, when I started my journey as an entrepreneur. So I got to know a lot about it, a lot of good people over there, and I met, and that's the good thing about internet, right? So we get mentors from different parts of the country. So yeah.
Since we were born during the pandemic, so there was no difference between a tier 1 and tier 2 at that time, because the entire world had gone online. So that was one positive, because we were at that time, we were also equals, and there was no discrimination between a Bangalore, Delhi, or a Jamshedpur, or Chaibasa for that matter. And because of the connectivity, I'm very positive on the fact that if you're able to build and operate with the theory of constraints, right, then you perform better when you get abundance. So when you don't have people around and you're fighting for it and you're finding them out on different platforms, when there are people around you, you kind of you're more confident because you've got that opportunity. And lastly, because of the connectivity, the entire country is now 3 hours away. So taking a flight from a Kolkata to a Delhi is the same, it takes the same time traveling from Noida to Gurgaon. So those are the positive signs that I see, and because there's no other choice, because I have to build it from Bharat.
Most of the times we tend to externalize our problems and look at the limitations as kind of roadblocks to success. But I think what's important for startup founders, and many of you, I see students here, so many of you would be already planning your startups. Some already have your startups. I think one of the things to learn from the entire thing is that whatever happens, your primary job as a founder is to solve problems. And if this is going to be one of the problems, so be it. Just go ahead and solve it. Having said that, Ravi, since you have had so many roles, different roles played, the question that I wanted to ask you is, we still need the reverse migration to happen, right? So what can startup founders do differently? What can the community do differently to kind of get people to look beyond a Bangalore or a Gurgaon, even in terms of when you want to mentor someone? It's very easy to meet somebody in a coffee shop, but it's very difficult. And I know half a dozen mentors just recently went to Patna to attend the board meeting for Hanuman. It's very difficult to actually get up in the morning and catch an early morning flight and go to a Chaibasa. It's not easy. So what do you think the founders should do differently? What do you think the ecosystem should do differently?
Because I have opportunity to travel, I travel around 23 days a month. So people ask me, where do you stay? That's a very difficult question to answer because I'm mostly traveling, but this travel gives me very interesting perspective. Today, while I'm talking to all of you in this very nice city, tomorrow I'll be in a very small town or a small village. One of the very important fundamental why people are looking to build startups or work with startups is because of the culture, how different it is from a typical corporate, right? So in a startup, mostly it's flat hierarchy, and you are very accessible. Founders are very accessible, and for you as an individual to grow, you have a lot of opportunities, which is not the case in corporate. 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, the opportunity for a young person to get a nice job was limited to only certain companies. And unfortunately, those companies are based out of Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, or Hyderabad, or maybe Pune. Beyond these cities, there's no IT exposure. So as a job seeker, you don't have an option but to go to these cities, which is changing today. If you look at India, you'll be very happy to know that India today is one of the largest economy in the world. Uber has one of the largest market outside of US in India. Ola is now expanding to really small cities. There are a lot of really large companies which started with metro cities, but today their larger chunk of revenue comes from tier 2, tier 3 and beyond. One of the reasons which is very interesting, we invested in a company called HESA. HESA, what they do is that they empower rural commerce. So today, in Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, you have option to go to a mall and buy whatever you want. I mean, it's available. For people who are living in small places, they don't have an option to go to a mall, and they still possess the same purchasing power. What it means is that this is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to bring those goods and services to small places, right? That's first part of it. Second part, how we can do the reverse migration and how we can create a very interesting ecosystem where even the small towns can attract good talent. I would like to share another example of a very interesting company called Super Sourcing. Two of my friends, Mayank and Aditi, they built this company from Indore. It was earlier called Engineer Babu. Today it's called Super Sourcing. They first focused on building a culture in Indore. Today, as a founder, you want to attract really good talent, but think about it. You go to Patna or you go to Ranchi, after your team is done working, there's no place where they can go and hang out. There's no opportunity for them to kind of socialize. People don't think about it. Governments have an opportunity and responsibility to promote these small ecosystems beyond the typical usual suspect, where startup founders and their teams can come together and they can have the same vibe, as we call it, in small town. Number two. Number three, I think one of the most important responsibilities for the academia. Today, we have so many colleges across the country. Unfortunately, most of them are just a printing machine where they print a degree and hand it over to the student. There's no focus on skill development. There's no focus on preparing these students so that they can get really good opportunities. If we are able to bridge this gap, Prabhash, I think we don't need to let our talent move from Ranchi to Bangalore or from a small town in Andhra Pradesh to US, where everyone is aspiring to go out of their place where they are right now. So I think these are the three things which I would like to add.
Although I was recently in Ranchi, and I must say it has great hangout places. It's just that you have no one to hang out with in that sense, because. So, like for example, let me call it out because it's important for them to call out things as well. I think the Jharkhand government is sleeping on the job. Not much is happening there. They are building a flyover for the last 20 years. It's still one pillar. And these are some of the challenges that we are going to be facing really. In comparison, if you go to, let's say, just 400 kilometers away to a Raipur, you see a lot of work happening, things changing, great roads, great infra, great connectivity, and things. I was in Raipur recently. I was also in Darbhanga, and you can see the stark realities between a Darbhanga and a Raipur. And to begin with, all are smaller towns only. So we are on the verge of concluding a round for Jhaji stores, which was on Shark Tank last year. Unfortunately, they couldn't raise there, and the same night we connected and we said, look, we are going to do it, and we are closing around. So they are the real mother's recipe of India, because they are actually, I was there, 50 ladies actually making pickle the traditional way, and yet it can be delivered to Bangalore in less than a week. so D2C of Achar, So great work happening in those parts.
And just to add to that, Prabhas, I'll just take a minute. When we were designing Shark Tank last year, one of the thing was very clear that we are going to get a lot of ideas from tier 2 and tier 3, but we never expected that out of the 60,000 applications, almost 60% of them were from tier 2, 3 and beyond. This year, I'm very sure we'll have way more applications coming from really small places, because again, what has happened because of a show like Shark Tank, that anyone who had a dream or an idea and people were ridiculing them, even their parents were saying that, why will you, after finishing such a nice degree, you'll go and do a startup, rather do a job. But today things are changing. Instead of asking, where did you get placed? I have heard people asking their friends, did you raise your Series A? Did you raise your first round of funding? And I think that's changing. And I'm glad that this is happening. You will see more and more stories like Chaji store coming to India.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I was personally vested in Chaji stores is because I don't know whether you noticed or not, but this panel has a serious diversity problem. And and the next time I am here, I want to make sure that we have more women founders here. In fact, I did ask Kalpana ji. Whether she wanted to come and join this panel, but they are right now busy with their race. Plus, it's the season when you are buying mangoes, you are making pickle, and all the traditional way. So this session is called democratizing, right? But when you use such a word, in a way, it also means that you are demonizing something, right? Because the assumption underlying is that right now it's not a democracy. So would you guys agree that right now it's not a democracy? Or I think we need to be kinder to the ecosystem and say that, look, only when we are ready, they will come and vest in us.
Democratizing is a little harsh, but the truth is that tier 2, tier 3 founders and founders coming from non-premier business colleges are a little undervalued. So when you look up to a startup idea, or when you look up to their execution capacity, you don't look historical data and you just look ki a startup is at Chaibasa or the founder is from a government school. So that is somehow there what I have felt. But again, as I said previously, if there is a problem, you will find a solution. So people come, and as Ravi said that 60% of the startups in Shark Tank India was from tier 2, tier 3 town. So it is not that we are not getting the platform. It is just that we have to struggle a little more. We have to be better prepared. One thing that I would like to add to Ravi, after Shark Tank India, things have changed a lot. So when I was telling my family and my friends that I'm going to do a startup, I remember one incident. One of my friends said that he listened to me patiently, and then after 5 minutes, he said, okay, you first stand up, go outside the room, come back, think for 5 minutes, and then we'll talk again. So no one was convinced that a startup can be done at Patna. So yes, it is democratizing is really required, and events like this has to happen every now and then, so that people know that startups exist in smaller towns, and there are good opportunities both from investment perspective and also from building a business perspective in smaller towns.
Thank you. In fact, Uday just promised me that this event is going to be happening in Patna or Ranchi next time around. I'm going to hold you accountable to that promise. I saw a beautiful series of Hanuman ads, and I'm going to be directing the questions to these two gentlemen here. Koi aaye ya na aaye, Hanuman zarur aayenge. So I believe vernacular communication is going to be one of the keys of trying to build in, for, and of Bharat, right? So what has been your experiences when you have been trying to communicate with Bharat? Because even your cohort has to come from there, not just the business, but even the business users need to come from Bharat. So what has been your experience in using vernacular communication, vernacular content? And I'm sure there are content writers, content students here. They need to take away some message from here, right? Because mano ya na mano, hum Angrez hain. और हमें बदलने की जरूरत है.
In my startup, from the very beginning, we got that idea as we were in Bhubaneswar. So especially for the merchants, for the shopkeepers out there, we have to use their language, Odisha language. This is our language actually. So yeah, it's very necessary actually, and that's why we used it from the very beginning in our app. In both our app, you will see local languages out in the app. So that's very required actually.
I've been fortunate enough in my life till now that I've traveled and stayed at almost all the states in India, and travel has helped me identify what the general conversation happens when you are in a train, or when you're boarding a flight, or when you're in a bus, or even like at a restaurant, and you pick those things. So content is created by, and it's basically the voice of the society that is being reflected in the form of an advertisement. And vernacular language is the best way to connect. And I guess one of Bharat Pay's founder, Ashneer Grover, has been saying this is कि अगर कोई हिंदी में बोलता है तो लगता है कि सही में दिल से बोल रहा है, बट अगर इंग्लिश बोलने लगता है कि थोड़ा फेक होगा, right? So that has been said multiple times, and I firmly believe that you need to connect with the audience, and how we have done it till now, and we've got people from the remotest part of the country, from Bongaigaon in Assam, someone teaching, someone in studying in an IB school in Bombay and a Bangalore. And the first conversation has been in Hindi, or if there has been a Northeastern in our basically team. So they've interacted with them, and because we have got a lot of Bengalis, and the credit goes to the operations team, and the way they interact and solve problems very quickly. That happens because of the vernacular language, and English or Hindi also doesn't work there. So I am not the one at the helm of affairs, but it's the team for connecting. So
ignore the timer. Uday told me that people are having fun with the session, so we can continue a little longer. So don't worry about that. Let me call out another monkey in the room before we talk some more with Niraj on the vernacular thing. I'll come back to you, Niraj, because your ads were super. Now, we tend to believe that if you are a founder out of Bangalore, you are getting everything on a plate. And if you are a founder out of Patna, people are wronging you. But perhaps there is a monkey in the room. Would you say, and you have interacted with other founders, but plus you have also peeked into your own minds, right? Would you say that perhaps we are also caught up in the smallness of things, and we need to be able to think really large and really widen our canvas to do well? And this question is to all three of you, and Ravi, you can add with your experience of what you have seen with other founders.
Yes, very true. So there is lack of enough information at our cities, and even the mindset get trained when you live in smaller cities. So I'll give a little small example. So yesterday only, where I stay at ACS layout, I found out that a 2 BHK flat entire furniture was at 5,000 per month rental basis. If I go and set up a 2 BHK flat, all furnitures in Patna, that will cost me not less than 2 lakh. And there is no rental business of furniture in Patna. So if you will ask me the cost of setting up an office, I'll certainly say it will be 5 lakh rupees. Whereas a founder sitting in Bangalore, he will say that he'll set up an office in 20,000 rupees. So there, and many examples, I see bike companies giving rental, I see bicycle companies giving rental, I see advertisements, I see advertisement on subscription model. So if I go and design an advertisement in Patna, or for that matter Ranchi, I'll have to spend at least 50,000 for a YouTube ad, a 30-second ad, or a 1-minute ad. But you can get a ad designed here in just 5,000 rupee, and that too also on EMIs. So there is a huge shift of resource availability and the kind of business modeling happening in larger cities and in comparison to smaller cities, and we are unaware of it. For that difference, we are of a mindset that we have to conserve cash, we have to build something very conservatively, and we don't think big. One of the investor question was, what if I remove the money constraint of your business and you have to scale pan India? What will you do? I had no answer. So there is a definite lack, and there where is people like Ravi who say that I'm a entrepreneur evangelist. Their role comes and they train the mindset. They just don't give the business modeling. They train the mindset of how you should look at a business, how you should look at a scale. So certainly there are differences and deficiencies at both the end.
Scale, of course, you need to think really big. And that was one of the first thing that when starting Playbook, we were like, we're not just going to build for where we are. We are going to build it from Bharat for the world. And that vision has been transferred to the other team members also. And unless and until what I feel is that we are really kind of becoming desperate, but we need one or two Infosys like examples in a tier 2, tier 3 cities to create that ecosystem. And once that happens, and Prabhash, you've also been saying this during our conversations before, that once we have such examples, Indian audience or we all are aspirational and we would love to be like them. But for that, the smallness to go, because we are not ready to discuss in Jamshedpur. If you're at a cafe, even if you meet a stranger and you're having a conversation, no one is ready to share ideas. So it's not the larger things that we need to see, but the smaller changes that we need to look at the society in general to bring about that large change that will eventually happen. So probably if we one of us becomes an example or role model, then obviously the state and the government will also come and then create that ecosystem. And because last thing we know about Jamshedpur is Tata Steel, and it's still the steel city. Post that, there's been nothing else. So if that something of that sort happens, then would be happy to be that torchbearer.
I was in Raipur recently and I walked into a Reliance brands multi-brand outlet called the White Crow. That's a new format that they're trying. And I realized that in a city like Raipur, a store manager can earn about ₹1 lakh a month, and a fashion consultant can earn about 35,000 rupees a month. And the fashion consultant was a typical fashion institute fresher who wants to get to the customer's skin before they go to design. And then I also realized when I was talking to people there that Amazon, Facebook, Google, Infosys, TCS, practically everybody has taken up office space there. So India is also changing. Bharat is changing. It's taking a little longer. And that's why I think people like Ravi and myself, we need to be looking at a really long-term vision. Unlike what we teach our startup founders that, look, you can't look beyond 3 years. We have to do the reverse. We have to look at it as a really, really long-term solution. Ravi, you want to say something?
Sure. No, absolutely. I think, as I said, I'm very privileged that I get a chance to travel across. I have been to the remotest part of the country, places like Nagaland, Manipur, small places in Orissa, Tamil Nadu. And one thing which is very interesting is that in these places, young people are very hungry. They are looking for opportunities. They keep bombarding me with messages on LinkedIn and WhatsApp. Unfortunately, there are some points when I'm not able to respond to them. But I'll tell you a very interesting how dots are being connected. So around 5 to 6 years ago, when I started this opportunity where I would go across the country and I would train people on entrepreneurship, 5 years down the line, now those people who I met, they have built companies, they have raised capital, they have hired people, they have solved problems. So things are changing. And I'm very privileged that I have been part of this. I have been able to contribute to the 2 lakh people which I trained on entrepreneurship. Around at least 5,000 people I know who have left their job or never went for a job and built a startup. Now you can imagine that these 5,000 people would be able to create so many opportunities. I would like to give you one more very interesting perspective to all of you. I'm sure a lot of you would be aware. India today is the 3rd largest startup economy in the world. We are the 3rd largest, right? China, US, and India. What it means that we have been able to create some really high quality startup who have raised capital and a lot of good things have happened. Still, India today has 1 lakh startups. Let's say top 2 lakh startups. Do you know how many startups China has? Any wild guess, Prabhash? Wild guess how many startups are there in China? And you need to think about it, because if India has 1 lakh startup and we are number 3, China should not be very far ahead, right? China has 3.5 crore startups. So when people come back and say that, oh, startup is it's already saturated, the bubble is going to burst, what are you going to do? Nobody's going to give you money. India has literally not even started. We have not even covered 5% of our problems. There's so much to be achieved, and these things would not be possible only by Bangalore, Mumbai, or Delhi. We do not have a choice. We have to get these cities on the map where people can solve problems. One of the things which I did this year, I wanted to do something very unique. So for venture capitalists, I created a program called Khoj. And the objective is to go to 100 cities across India and talk about entrepreneurship. We have already covered 12 cities, and I'm very glad that we are going to small of the places, like places, which are like 100 kilometers from Vijayawada and, 100 kilometers from Patna, and going to all these places to talk about entrepreneurship. Because what is happening for a country of 1.4 billion, and I'm sure you guys know today, India is going through a phase called demographic dividend, which happens every decade for one country. Japan had the demographic dividend in the early 60s and 70s. Then Russia had, then US has. What is happening in demographic dividend is that this is a phase where a country is the youngest. So India has entered demographic dividend from 2016, and it's going to go till 2042. Unfortunately, at this point of time, our brightest minds are not solving the problems which needs to be solved. They are still, unfortunately, struggling. So there are two India rather. One India where there's a newspaper article which talks about a job. It's a job by a UP government, peon. Basically, you need to deliver a letter from one police station to the other police station. Your eligibility has to be, you should be class 5 and you should know how to ride bicycle. For this job, which is not a bad job, it's a good job, 36,000 PhD, 57,000 MBA, and 1 lakh graduates applied. That is one India. And unfortunately, most of the colleges are contributing to that. And the second India is, I know a person, just 1 month ago, I hosted him for a similar fireside chat. 3,000 people were there in the hall. After the event got over, people literally mobbed him. I'll tell you this very beautiful story. This is the second India. I met him when he was 19-year-old. I was working in Delhi. So Indian Angel Network, we used to host pitch day where people will come and raise capital. Typically at that point of time, 2010-11, people used to wear suit, 40-year plus, very beautiful speaking English and very suave, right? This guy was wearing a denim, carrying a backpack, and he had an idea. Never gone to a college, never did a job, but he wanted to solve a problem which was for real Bharat. Unfortunately, that day people could not, he could not raise capital. And I spoke to him, and he spoke about his passion of solving this problem. He was so passionate, he was kept on going on this. I'm just going to take 1 more minute, Prabhash. And then I asked him, how are you managing? He said, it's very difficult. My landlord has asked me to vacate my place because I have not paid rent for last 3 months. The money which my parents had given me, I spent all of that on building the website, but I'm not going to stop. I will go and build this company. He kept on hustling. And then when I met him last year, his company is now valued at around $12 billion, and his personal net worth is almost $1 billion. This is Ritesh Agarwal of Oyo Rooms. We need so many more Ritesh Agarwal who would keep on going. Do not lose that perseverance. Do not lose that passion. And as I said, India has just started in terms of startup ecosystem. So there's so much to be achieved. And to be honest, without these tier 4, 5, 6, we cannot achieve that dream, Prabhash.
Ritesh Agarwal incidentally was one of the speakers in Stream 1 earlier today. The good news, because there's always a good news, about 12,000 private limited companies and about an equal number of LLPs get registered in India every month, which basically means that you are adding more than 1 lakh of companies every year in this country. So China had a time and our time is now. So we are definitely getting there. And when you go out and you talk to people, there's a robotic startups out of Jamshedpur. There's a 21-year-old student building Oho Rooms, which is a hostel startup out of places like Bokaro, Patna, Ranchi, Jamshedpur. There's a mining tech startup incubated at ISM Dhanbad, which is IIT Dhanbad now, which is trying to solve some real life problems in mines. If you look at mines, for the last 100 years, very little has changed. Yeah, it's still likely they operate in the same fashion, but these guys are trying to change it dramatically. I can't talk about the solution, of course. And then, of course, on the other side, you have people who are trying to kind of hold on to our traditional India as well. Jhaji store is one. I personally believe that achar, as we know it, is going extinct in India because it used to be passed on from grandmothers to mothers to sas to bahu, mother to daughter, mother-in-law to daughter-in-law, and there are very few daughter-in-laws who are making achar today in India. And there are people who are trying to solve for that, at scale. There are other things also falling in place. A lot of governments are waking up across the country. A lot of institutes are waking up. A lot of so if you see other AICs that are being set up across colleges, schools, then you will see government taking in people from lateral entries from MBS to IAS officers, and there are people like Amber Dubey who has changed the entire drone ecosystem of the country. So 2 years back, the Indian government was anti-drone. Now this year, the Indian government is trying to map 6.5 lakh villages through drones. People are getting drone mapped property cards now. So a lot of things are changing for the positive in the country. And if you look at a drone, the mechanical side aside, it is largely artificial intelligence. Drone has to do the same thing as any other artificial intelligence agency does. They are supposed to map and differentiate between. So if you are a surveillance drone, you have to differentiate between a regular human being and a terrorist. You have to differentiate between a cow and a human being. And if you are a mapping drone, you have to be able to differentiate my property from somebody else's property. And a lot of people are solving from. There are agri-tech startups which are based out of Ranchi who are trying to solve either climate controlled agriculture or managing your fleet of your cows and buffaloes and goats, geotagging your animals. So animal husbandry is changing because of startups. So I think tech and non-tech and tech-enabled, all three kinds of startups are flourishing in this country. Some are known, some are lesser known, some are unknown, some are going to be bootstrapped forever. India is also known for a country of bootstrapped SME founders. When we say startup, we tend to think of now, right? We talk about 52 unicorns or 22 unicorns this year, but actually there are 400 plus unicorns listed on the stock exchanges. Companies which never sought fund the non-traditional way. They either went to friends and family, or they went to banks, and in that process they got listed and they became billion-dollar organizations. They have 400 plus billion-dollar organizations already in the country. People talked about democratic dividend. People talked about smallness of our own minds and how do we come out of that. I think we are going places as a country, and all of you, especially the younger ones here, you have to trust that. Trust your instinct. There's reverse migration happening to smaller towns because the living conditions are better there. Land is abundant. You can travel 15 kilometers in 15 minutes. A lot of good things are also there in smaller towns. I'm opening the floor for questions. I do have 10 minutes. 2 minutes, couple of questions, yeah.
Most of you touched upon the, I don't think I need this.
Use the mic.
Okay, so can you hear me better? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think most of you touched the kind of geographic divide, the lack of areas to vibe at or connect. Of course, there are the adverse question or the adverse point of it where there are large companies now moving into Raipur, Nagpur, Jaipur, but again on the west side of the country, right? So what I'm getting at is for a long time, we did not look at the east part of the country well. I'm sorry, I have also been a part of that. I come from Maharashtra. So we come from a very privileged part of the country. What do you think is lacking in terms of infrastructure, not in terms of what the roads and bridges the government is building or not building on speed, but in terms of offices, in terms of let's say collaboration rooms or a coffee shop. So what is it that you're looking for? Thank you.
I'll just add very quickly. So interestingly, what's happening in tier 2 and tier 3, a new wave of co-working is happening. In fact, from Patnayak,
Exactly.
Alok is a friend. He has built a very interesting chain of co-working, which is now in a lot of cities. But what I believe is that we need more areas to collaborate, both for work and play, which is not available right now on both east and west coast when we go to tier 3 and beyond. So I think even the real estate conglomerates and large companies, they have to look at how can we make places more accessible, more affordable, and more collaborative, so that a typical real estate would not solve the purpose of a startup. That's why co-working came into existence.
Of course, exactly.
And I think a lot was happening pre-COVID. I'm sure now we would again go back to the co-working and co-living space, which is a very interesting opportunity for the real estate giants as well.
Thank you for bringing that up. So that's what I was actually referring the conversation towards. There are co-working companies which are penetrating into the tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. So what's that one or two, let's say, key areas you're looking at for them to provide that kind of infrastructure for you?
So if you ask me a question like that, see, a co-working space comes together because the other ecosystem players also hang around, right? For example, I understand that it's opening a current account is twice as difficult in Ranchi as it is in Bangalore, you know. So a lot of other support infra that needs to come in. So if you want to go as a co-working space to a smaller town, my recommendation would be to go along with all the other services as well, you know. Become a service aggregator, not just a co-working. See, Ranchi, you can hang out in a friend's balcony and build your startup, right? The friend's balcony is also cheap. But to be able to get into a co-working space, and if you think co-working, you will think of co-works or WeWorks. And then if you go to a Ranchi and see a co-working space, it's very different. You know, the tiles are broken, the coffee machine may not be hygienic. So a lot of those things need to be fixed. And plus the services have to be brought in. I'm sorry, Uday told me this is the only question I can take. So if others have a question, the panelists are all here. We are at the back of the room. I will be happy to take those questions at the back of the room. We are here. We are very much. Yes, sir. Sorry. You wanted to ask something. Let me just finish with this gentleman here. Just one.
Sir, you are mentioning about 1,500 ambulances. Can we not use drones along with the police force, especially in a city like Bangalore, to clear the way for ambulances much before they're caught in heavy traffic? Because that golden hour and things matter. We can use drones to aid the police force so that they can open the signal for ambulances and clear the way for ambulances.
Wonderful idea, sir. We'll look on to it. Otherwise, we are providing the nearest possible ambulances. So all these 1,500 ambulances are not hospital specific locations. They are based in communities, at corporate offices, at apartments. Therefore, you get the ambulances, the nearest possible ambulance, not just the ambulance coming far away from some hospital. But of course, drone clearing up the passage is a wonderful idea. We'll have a look at it.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was lovely having you for this chat over. And thank you for taking your early morning flights, late evening flights to come over. Thank you so much.